Hi, my name is Bob Jablonsky, and I work with taxpayers who have tax problems and help them resolve those tax issues. Today, I want to talk to you about the Taxpayer Advocate Service. The Taxpayer Advocate Service is a group that you may find to be very helpful if you owe the IRS, you're dealing with an IRS problem or issue of some sort, and you're finding that there's something, their system is broken and they're unable to resolve your problem effectively, or you're being treated unfairly. And so, in those cases, the Taxpayer Advocate Service could be your ally, probably quite possibly your best ally. I actually utilize them as well myself, even though I'm a professional working with the IRS. Sometimes I find that the Taxpayer Advocate Service is phenomenal to work with because while I can talk to people on the phone, they actually have contacts and so on, and they can get directly into the government and get responses when sometimes outside parties can't. So what is the Taxpayer Advocate Service? The Taxpayer Advocate Service it's an independent organization. They are a part of the IRS, but they're independent from the normal daily workings of the IRS. And they help taxpayers resolve issues that they've been unable to resolve on their own. And the mission of the TAS, Taxpayer Advocate Service, or TAS, is that every taxpayer is treated fairly and that issues are addressed promptly and equitably. So when is the Taxpayer Advocate Service available? TAS is available to help taxpayers facing hardship due to unresolved tax issues. This doesn't mean that if you can't come to an agreement with the IRS, you're perhaps according to the IRS policies and financial analysis, they think you should be paying X for a payment plan, and you come up with Y and you just refuse to negotiate with them. That doesn't mean the Taxpayer Advocate Service is going to get involved and resolve your issue. However, there are times where the system's just broken, the taxpayer is being garnished, and they're being economically harmed, and they are doing their best to resolve it, but due to just the process within the IRS, they're unable to. Taxpayer Advocate Service may get involved there. They address systemic problems with the IRS that affect taxpayers on a broader scale. Sometimes the system's broken and it's not fixable within the normal process. They help get involved. And then they can also serve as an advocate for those navigating complex or challenging tax situations. And that could be a whole wide variety of issues. So here's some common situations where the taxpayer advocate system can help. Delays in refunds or IRS actions. They're not taking actions promptly and it's creating a delay that's creating an economic hardship, such as a refund when the funds are needed for the taxpayer. Going with that, issues that create economic hardship. We talked about that a moment ago, but let's say, for example, you're being garnished and the IRS is just not working fast enough to resolve the problem. You're doing everything you can. The IRS isn't doing it on their side. That might be where the taxpayer advocate gets involved. Identity theft issues are one area where they can help. And then, as we mentioned earlier, there's sometimes systemic problems within the IRS, things that are occurring over and over again due to a system that's broken, and they can get involved in those situations. So how do they help you? They as I mentioned earlier, they're independent from the IRS enforcement process. So they're under the IRS technically, but they're not, but they act independently. They can provide you with direct advocacy. They're actually going to be assigned to your case and work with you to help you personally resolve that issue within the IRS. They can sometimes expedite the processing, particularly in the cases where there's significant economic hardship. You can't pay your bills because of what the IRS is doing to you. They're really harming you. They can expedite processing often in those cases. And then with the systemic problems, they can sometimes get involved and not only help you resolve that, but then make recommendations to the IRS itself as to fixing those issues that they don't continue to harm taxpayers. So how do you do it? How do you get them involved? Well, the way that taxpayer advocates gets involved is through a form called Form 911. And I gave you a link there that you can go find that form, and you're going to download that form and you're going to complete it. Next, you got to know where to send it to, right? You can go, there's a Taxpayer Advocate, you can service, you can go Google it and you'll find it. And then within the website, and I gave you a link there, within taxpayeradvocate.irs.gov, you can go find your local office and it'll have phone numbers, fax numbers, and an email address. And so the next step would be you're going to send that completed form to them. You can fax it to them or you can scan it and email it to them. Or you could just call them to be. My next recommendation is to follow up call. Make sure they realize you get it because sometimes you're in a long queue. The IRS is behind and so is the Taxpayer Advocate Service. So you may wait weeks and in some cases even months if you're behind that far in the queue in that local area. So you can call them, but most likely the first thing they're going to have you do is complete the Form 911 when it gets time. So the easy way is get that ready, send it over to them, let them know that it was sent, and then you're going to have to wait. It's a waiting game until they contact you to get started. And, sometimes a tax resolution professional can help. We can help, they can help you in many cases, but sometimes you can't speak their language and the IRS's language. And you don't get done what you want to get done. So, a tax resolution professional can often bridge that gap between you, the IRS, and the taxpayer advocate and get them to explain to them exactly what you need done within the IRS so it's done quickly and effectively. And when I'm involved, I provide comprehensive case management. I'm the quarterback of the process. I'm making sure it gets done. There's things they're not going to help you. They're not going to help you set up a payment plan or find out what your best option is. That's what we do. So we sometimes work with them to get the problem solved, and then we help you resolve the remaining part of your tax issue. And then we're going to provide you a peace of mind to make sure that that things are working to the best they can for you. The result is the best you could hope for. There's a lot of times I've been involved, but normally it's like really complicated processes. Some things are really simple. I'll give you an example. One time I had a client. And the client was, let's say they're an accountant. There's something like an accountant along those lines, where there's no reason why they would have a bunch of vendors that they would 1099 that builders would have, all the different vendors that a builder would have. And in that case, what we needed to do was, I kept trying to explain to the IRS, this is not correct. This has nothing to do with this taxpayer. The taxpayer can't resolve this. They were getting penalized for non-filing. The taxpayer can't resolve this because it's not theirs. I don't know how they got it or how it got under their tax identification number, but they were getting sent penalties for something that had nothing to do with them. And, it went on multiple times, going back and forth with different parts of the IRS. Finally, I got the Taxpayer Advocate Office involved. It took a little bit of time for them to take the case, but the person actually resolved it within like 2 or 3 days. Now, that's not the norm. The norm there's complex things there because it was so obvious that this really should have never occurred. This was just a wrong taxpayer that was getting assessed this penalty. Sometimes it's complex where, like in cases I had a taxpayer, they had multiple companies and they filed payroll tax reports under the wrong EIN. We had to get it all reversed and fixed, and the IRS just couldn't fix it internally. And they were able to help resolve it because there's different departments that would do each step of the way, and they were able to help organize the whole process to get that done. So there's times that even someone like myself gets them involved because they often have that direct interface with the IRS. Now, as I mentioned, they don't get involved with every case, but when they do, they can be super effective. So keep them in mind if you're dealing with an IRS problem. This is the end of this. I hope you find it helpful. If you are having a problem with the IRS, this is something you might want to at least take a look at doing. If you like the video, if you find it helpful, please do like it so that others will see it. If you're not subscribing to my channel, please subscribe. If you have IRS issues and you want to learn more about the situation, or you want some tax advice, because we do tax planning as well. If you have any quick questions that I can answer, leave it in the comments below and I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as possible. And if you need professional help, you're looking for a professional to work with, give me a call, 972-821-1991.